Hey everybody, it's Elon from Inside Fighting, and I just got my ass whooped in Kyokushin yesterday. Started training that again, and yeah, that has nothing to do with this video, other than I'm not as tough as I thought I was. Moving on, I like self-defense. Self-defense is something I'm very passionate about, and today we're going to talk about a style I came across which ticks all the boxes. So stay tuned. We're going to jump right in.
Pow pow, inside fighting, yeah, dangerous martial arts. Pow pow, ooh ah.
All right, guys, as you know, before we get started, I'm doing a weird accent for absolutely no reason at all. Okay, so here's the deal. You want to support the channel? I have no idea what I was just doing back there. Just disregard it all. It was embarrassing. Just go to InsideFightingStore.com. Check it out. There's a cool instructional on there. I'm doing the next one, which is part 2 of that instructional next week. And if you don't like the instructional, you don't get anything out of it, I'll refund you fully. But that's the way to support the channel. Or if you don't want to do that, like, subscribe, and comment, and share the video. That means a lot too. Thanks so much. Jumping in. The martial art I am talking about is called Sorudo. Now, this is a Eastern European martial art. It's from the Czech Republic. All right, I'm going to try and pronounce the guy's name properly, the founder of the style, Petr Muchka. He's a young guy. Looks like he's in his 40s at the latest, if I have to guess. And what's fascinating is he started this system very, very young, extremely young. And he's gone on to teach people in the military. He's gone on to teach a whole range. In other words, like the top of it is people in the military, special forces, all the way down to people who are in wheelchairs or have physical disabilities. So huge range. He says the style's for everyone. And actually, I agree after looking at their methodology. I want to show something right off the bat that I liked about this system. Every time I talk about self-defense, every time, if I make a video, if it's at a seminar, wherever the situation, if I bring up the word self-defense, weapons fighting, anything like that, there's always at least one person who's like, well, I would just run. The best self-defense is track and field. If you go on my comments, anytime I've ever made a video, if you're one of these people, I'm not saying it to insult you, but it's literally a go-to response in every situation. It's the ultimate self-defense technique. Number one, everyone knows that if you have distance to run, you should run. But there are countless situations where that is not the case. There are countless situations where you're boxed in, countless situations where there's multiple people, or there's a weapon and it's impossible to run. And this was one of the first videos I came across. Let's just add it to the stage. And they actually show what people say to do, what you should do, right? Run away. So this is someone else's video. And now he's showing what happens when you run away. When you turn your back and run, you better hope you're the faster guy or that the guy does not grab you the second you push off and start stabbing you. Exactly like this. Running is not always an option. You cannot always turn your back on someone and get away. And I know this from personal experience because on my channel, I talk about a story where I got into a confrontation with someone in Portugal, 2 people actually. And a lot of people were like, well, you should have just run. No, I couldn't have just turned my back and ran. I was backing up while facing my opponent. You can't just always give your back to someone, especially if they're armed or there's more than one person. So that was just something I liked that they kind of addressed right off the bat. Now, let me just play this in the background as I talk about some of the key things about this system that really stuck out to me and that are good. Now, self-defense is self-defense. It's different than martial arts. The approach is different. The philosophy is different. And one of the most important things in self-defense is variables, trying to create as many unpredictable situations as possible. This is very contrary to martial arts or competitive fighting, sport fighting, where everyone always says, just get in the ring and prove it works in the ring. In the ring, you know the variables. In the street, you don't. And so what real self-defense training should teach you is pre-fight engagement and dealing with numerous unpredictable variables. Wow, my English is going. Okay, so let's just pull this up. Now, if you look at this, what he just did, they're big into telescopic batons. He actually expanded the baton as he was striking. And it's really nice that they're teaching deployment of the taban. Guys, let me tell you what's going on. I'm getting a migraine and it's affecting my speech. So as I get more incoherent throughout this video, please forgive me. But they do a lot of live baton training, which is really, really nice to see because a lot of people just dismiss this as an effective tool. And to me, the baton is an incredibly effective tool, especially in close quarters against someone who has a knife. The longer range impact weapon is very, very effective against a short range bladed weapon. and it's even more effective against an unarmed guy. So you can keep your range and you can attack limbs without killing the person. If you can break the person's hand, you can break their kneecap, you can come out against even someone with a knife on top. In fact, in my opinion, in this range, the safest tool you can have, even more so than another knife, which is the same range as the other guy's knife, is an expandable baton. The problem with batons, and you see how they're training with a little bit of forward pressure. This doesn't signify the whole system. He's given this guy kind of an intro to baton and teaching him some tactics to see if he can apply it. Now, this guy clearly has decent movement. He understands footwork. He moves nice. So he's hitting the arm first. He's using very, very strong principles. One thing that I will say is I noticed and I'll just pull back here. I noticed they do start from a closed position a lot. In other words, when I have a baton, I like it in my lead hand at range because, again, this is a ranged tool. I like it in my lead hand, and I like it from an open position. This means open. This means closed. Even if this arm comes across, if this arm stays here, my arm is now crossing my body. It is in a closed position. That's what we refer to open, closed. Now, there are some times where being in a closed position makes sense, even empty hand, if you're going to kind of cover up your chin and you're going to elbow somebody and you're going to drive in. Right, there are times where that makes sense. With a baton, if you're in a closed position, you're giving up a lot of your leverage. You're also allowing yourself to potentially be trapped. And if someone gives you a ton of forward pressure, this back movement isn't always going to be enough to stop them. But if you're open and you could just keep hitting or even whip through with powers, then come back, you have a lot more options. Being in an open position gives you more attacks, especially to lead limbs, than being in a closed position. This is a preferential thing. I'm not bashing them for it. I've done Filipino martial arts my whole life, and I used to fight a lot from a closed position. In Dos Pares, you'll see we do a lot of kind of, these type of movements. And when I went to Ilustrísimo, I was kind of closing sometimes to come off on an angle, and I noticed I'd get caught more against those guys because they're so good at handling range, whereas Dos Pares is close quarter, Ilustrísimo is long range. Until I experienced a long range system, guys who are good with knives, machetes, sticks at that range, I didn't understand the value of staying open and being able to control and manage distance like that. So the baton, great tool. Problem with the baton, illegal in most states. So it's a very hard, and I like this, no bullshit, just reality. All right, fair enough. So here's some of the things they talk about. If you look, they're actually doing a knife attack. I see always like these crappy knife attacks that people talk about, demonstrated. Here he's showing people in a wheelchair fighting. Like I said, he teaches a whole range of people. And in this video, they actually talk about how Cerudo should teach every single person. You shouldn't have to be a world champion MMA fighter to be able to use your self-defense technique. But what's nice is they deal with a lot of pressure. They deal with unpredictable elements. Sometimes they'll just attack you in class without you knowing what you're going to be attacked with. This was how I trained my guys. A lot of forward pressure, a lot of pressure testing, a lot of adrenal stress response training. These are the type of things you want to see in a self-defense system. I notice also that they do a lot of open hand attacks, which people can bash, but I'm a huge advocate of open hand attacks in the street. If you're not going to condition the hell out of your hands, keep them open. There's benefits across the board to keeping your hands open. You have more tactile sensitivity in case a weapon is in play and you weren't aware that there's a weapon in play. Your hands are naturally going to be in an open position like he's showing. I do this also, right? The passive protective stance. So my hands are naturally already open. I shouldn't have to close them to then hit you. If they're here and I just do this, I don't need to think. It's much more convenient. And the chances of me grazing your eye, even if I'm not aiming for it, are much higher. You see this in MMA all the time. Close your hands, because they accidentally catch each other's eyes as they're closing in. It's a benefit to just having your hands open. You're also naturally more relaxed and you look more like a victim. You do not look like the aggressor. So there's a lot of benefits even beyond that to keeping your hands open. Tactile sensitivity, like I said, it allows you to transition into grappling without having to hit, then open, then grab. You're hitting and you're already grabbing at the same time. And I just always have preferred in self-defense situations to use my elbows and my hands open. That's just my preference. It's how I approach it. I notice they do it too, which is very, very nice. Okay, so just that on the side there, just to mention that, here's what they're talking about. They will watch videos of people training in class, people fighting in the street, people getting attacked, and they will analyze those videos. They'll teach you how to bandage up injuries. They're dealing with everything. They teach you not just how to fight in a ring, but literally every single variable that they think they can approach, they take it. In fact, they look at statistics from different countries to look what the most likely attack is in that country based on the statistics. That is genius. So few people actually do that. So it might just so happen that in Portugal, the most common attack in a street fight is an overhand right. But in Dominican Republic, it might be a knife attack stabbing you in the neck at this angle. And the more you train for that 90% attack, the more you're going to be prepared for what is most likely to occur. And I love that they literally look at wherever they're doing a seminar, they look at the statistics of that place and they take an approach that's an evolved approach for that place. It's genius. And it's something I like to do. I like to watch street fights in the United States all the time and analyze what's the number one attack. If you look in the United States, the number one thing you see is a right-handed haymaker. Period. End of story. I've analyzed it to death, which is why the Rhino technique that I teach is very hyper-optimized for that. And they also teach de-escalation. They teach pre-fight engagement, and they teach firearms. This is what a real self-defense system is. To all the people out there all the time saying, well, prove it in a ring, prove it in a ring. If it's not Muay Thai and it's not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or wrestling, it sucks. Look, this is a different animal. This will teach you that if you suddenly get cut or you're in a high trauma situation, number one, psychologically, it'll have prepared you better to deal with it. Number two, physically, like you saw, he was bandaging up wounds. Number three, you'll be more mentally prepared for a weapon to come into play. These are things that are more important than being able to beat John Jones, because you will never be able to beat John Jones. Self-defense is not intended, again, for combat sports athletes who are training 40 hours a week. It's intended for the average person who has 6 hours a week, maybe less, to come in, train, and not over a lifetime, but should become effective over 3 to 6 months and then hopefully progress over more time to be more and more effective. But if I can't instill into you basic principles that you can use within 3 months, there's something wrong with my self-defense system. It's too complicated. Okay, so just a great approach from them. I have nothing bad to say so far. Like I said, there's little variations in terms of how I would approach certain things. Let's get me over here. I like me over here more for some reason. I like that they teach people in wheelchairs. I think it's like a whole system unto itself to be able to teach people who, and you see like traditional martial arts do it, but they don't adapt themselves for it, which is one of the most annoying things in the world. If you have a limitation, you have to have a martial art that says, okay, let's create a system around your limitation. Whereas traditional martial arts or combat sports can't accommodate that in the same way. Now, if you are in a wheelchair, again, a baton is an incredibly effective tool. You're at kneecap range. You can hit the knee real easily. The one thing I disagree with here is, again, that backhanded attack. And I know he's trying to go light, but you just can't generate, and this is maybe just a difference in opinion, you can't generate immense power with a baton without full range of motion. And I know this is a controversial issue, but you need to hit hard in the street when people are having adrenal dumps, even when they're the aggressor. They could be on crystal meth. It's hard to take people out. And I've noticed even myself, like I'll hit somebody sometimes and they'll drop in training. But I've been in street fights where you're like cracking somebody and it's like they're invincible because their adrenaline is so high. There's other times where they just go unconscious. So you don't know the type of response you're going to get. What you want to do is develop as much force as possible. So in conclusion, I want to say this, something about self-defense. I think it's very important in a self-defense system. And again, I like that they're pressure testing. If you look, a lot of the training is physical. It's important that you train physically for self-defense. You have the techniques, you have the principles, but then there's the conditioning physical element. Because one of the most important things also beyond all of this is that your body is tough. Your body and your mind are tough. It's actually why I like Kyokushin a lot for my own personal training. Kyokushin is not, and I know I might get in trouble from people who love Kyokushin, it's not really a self-defense system in the same vein as this. But what does it give you? It gives you certain attributes which are incredibly useful for self-defense. It gives you incredible mental toughness. You're not going to give up if you train a system like Kyokushin. I know this is separate than what I've been talking about, but I'm just back into training and I'm excited about it, so I want to talk about it. It gives you intense mental toughness. It gives you intense physical toughness. You can take damage, okay? That builds a certain type of confidence. It also builds incredible conditioning. You will not get tired. Even when you have an adrenal dump, you will still move forward because in Kyokushin, you're going to fight 10 to 20 people in a row. You're going to deal with being at your breaking point over and over and over. And lastly, it teaches you immense power. You'll just hit hard. Your movements will be extremely powerful. So those 4 or 5 attributes that I just listed are incredible to add on to a system like this. If you take a guy who's trained in this system, but then he has those other attributes, which is just incredible physical toughness, mental toughness, conditioning, and being able to hit like a ton of bricks, which I have literally never met a Kyokushin black belt who doesn't have those attributes. It's consistent across every black belt I've met, like shockingly consistent. It's actually one of the only martial arts that I've ever experienced that is that consistent. I would say that in 2005 and prior, that was true of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which the quality of every black belt was at a certain standard. Guys had always been training like 8 to 10 years. And now you're even seeing in that system that it's changed completely. There's some dojos that pop up. There's some schools that just want money. And so even there, the skill set or the standards have changed. But again, off topic for this system, like I said, checks all the boxes of self-defense. Now, I will say this about self-defense. In the end of the day, any real effective self-defense system is going to come to the same conclusions. That's what I've learned. And those conclusions are, again, deal with adrenal stress response, train for multiple, as many as you can, unpredictable possible situations, and also keep it simple, stupid. Don't overcomplicate your system, which they seem to do, and pressure test. And so long as you're doing those things, your techniques and your body will naturally evolve in the right direction to figure these things out. But that's what makes self-defense completely different than a combat sport. Anyway, hope you liked it. I thought this was really cool. That's all I got to say about Ceruto. All right, then. Like and subscribe.